Hey everybody, welcome back to Good Marketing with Stephanie, where we talk about the macro and micro challenges facing marketers and communicators at all levels today. And I have to say, I'm stoked about today's topic. We're joined by Sooraj Shah, Head of Content Marketing at Aikido Security, a journalist turned content marketer who's here to break down a recent article from the Wall Street Journal about storytelling and how it is a hot commodity in the jobs market right now. So just for a little bit of context, back in December 2025, the Wall Street Journal published an article that was explosive in the marketing and comms circles on LinkedIn. And Sooraj, I don't know if for you, you also saw everybody posting about it, but I certainly did. But this article was titled, "Companies Are Desperately Seeking Storytellers." And the article points to several high-profile jobs at companies like Google and Microsoft that include storytelling and narrative creation as a key responsibility for whoever they were going to hire for this role. But what does storytelling actually mean in a corporate context? How is it operationalized in marketing and communications? What's the impact? I'm super excited to explore this today. So welcome to the show, Sooraj.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us and really looking forward to your perspective on this. So just to start, Sooraj, I always like to learn a little bit more about my guests and share with my listeners a little more about your background. And, you know, your career background is perfect for this topic we're going to discuss. So as a journalist turned marketer, you're uniquely qualified to speak on storytelling. So can you tell us a little bit more about your career journey, how you ended up making the switch, and what you're doing at Aikido Security today?
Yeah, so I guess I started off in journalism, in B2B tech journalism, I think 14 or 15 years ago now, and worked for a kind of technology publication and was there for about 5 years before I became freelance. And it was at that point where I was doing a little bit of both, writing the editorial side of things and then working on the commercial side for agencies, for clients, usually big tech companies or tech startups, and essentially doing a lot of content strategy, but also doing kind of blogs, press releases, working with PR agencies on media relations things. And so getting that mix of both worlds was great. And it got to a point where one client that I was working for quite a lot, which was a startup, suggested that I kind of go in-house, which wasn't something I was looking to do. I thought I'd be freelance for kind of forever because I was enjoying it that much, the kind of variety of work. But then I decided to kind of just take the challenge and see what it was like on the marketing side. And that's kind of my first experience of working solely for one company in terms of marketing. And it was really enjoyable. And it allowed me to kind of use my skill set in a completely different way while learning new things. I've since then worked at another startup, and now I'm on to Aikido Security, which is a kind of developer-first cybersecurity platform, a Belgian-based startup, which recently raised 60 million in a round, which valued the company at 1 billion.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing a little bit more about your background there. And, you know, I would love to know, for you in your current role at Aikido Security, how do you do storytelling, right? Because storytelling means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So for you, what does that actually mean? And how do you do that in your work every day?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from, and I think this is kind of the essence of it, is being able to take what is meant to be the kind of company narrative and be able to break it down into a digestible format in many different types of ways. So whether that is social media, whether that is a blog, whether that's PR, whether that's SEO articles, every type of work that you do has to kind of bring in the right type of messaging, the right narrative that you're kind of building from the top, which comes from kind of the leadership, and make sure that's embodied in everything that you do across content and across comms.
And when you talk about breaking down this story into, you know, all these different channels and using it across all these different mediums, you don't just mean like the story of, hey, this company is so great, or hey, here's the backstory for Aikido Security, or whatever company it is, right? It's not just the company story, right? Like there's a lot of different stories within that broader company story. So can you speak to that a little bit? And how do you find those stories?
Yeah, I think a lot of those things are found, firstly, in terms of, obviously, I say that from leadership, it kind of comes from a lot of the time from, the real world experiences that our sales team is having, that our customer success team is having, that leadership is having, with large customers, etc., where we're hearing pain points, we're hearing things in the market that are going wrong, we're hearing why people are selecting us, why they're not selecting us, why we need to change some of our messaging around on certain things. All of those things kind of contribute to the narrative that we want to play, and also how do we position ourselves to be completely different to anything else on the market. And that's all of those things combined is kind of how we put together a narrative. In terms of how we distill that into all these different assets, I think that a lot of that is to do with actually not just thinking of, so if there is for example, if we want to be seen as more upmarket, for instance, how do we go about that? How do we tell the story that we are, we should appeal to upmarket organizations as well as smaller organizations? That, for example, needs to run through the narrative that we're trying to speak to. So if, for example, we're doing a piece of research with a third party, how do we make sure that what we're doing the answers will actually come out that will relate to that? How does it make us look more like we are at market, but also at the same time aligning with everything else that we're doing? So it's kind of, you're never just telling one story, right? Like you said, you're kind of fusing together loads of different stories at once. So that's the difficulty of making sure the nuances are right when you're putting together any piece of content. It's never just like, hey, we just need to tell this one story and we're done. It's kind of like, no, but it has to follow X, Y, Z too. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great insight. And when I think about someone who might be listening to this podcast and thinking, okay, I get it. I get that there's a lot of different stories that we have to tell, and that we're trying to reach different audiences, engage different stakeholder groups. I get it. But how do I organize that, right? How do I actually operationalize that storytelling and making sure that whatever activities I'm doing fit within that broader narrative? And I would love, Sooraj, for you to just tell us, without giving away the secret ingredients and everything, but how do you do that in your role with Aikido Security, or in previous roles that you've held, to keep things organized and to make sure that you're aligning with that broader narrative, and also being able to communicate the results of that with your leadership?
Yeah, I guess a lot of that is kind of talking through each part of each project that you're doing on each asset as I think some of it is plainly obvious to leadership. So I think if you're doing the right work and you're putting in the right nuances to everything that you're doing, I think it's plain to see that you've considered all of those factors or to make that story resonate with the ideal audience. And in terms of organizing that or making sure that you have something that you can follow, or I guess it's doing it in a way which is structured so that you can quickly easily see, hey, this is everything that needs to be done to follow this one maybe narrative. This is how it should look. This is what still needs to be done. This is what's already done. These are the different formats we need this done in. And a lot of that and a lot of the work sometimes that organizations struggle with is the repurposing element, I guess, where you have the same content effectively, but you're not repurposing it effectively, or you're not reusing content effectively, which has been like golden, but just sitting kind of and feeling dated, but actually still being well worth resharing, etc. So that's something we're trying to now really work on, which is when we have something new, a new, say, product launch, we have everything in place to say these are all the different formats. And actually, rather than this person who's an expert in this and this person who's an expert in this type of format working on their own distinct things, like separately, why don't we actually just use those assets one after the other, so it's easier for the other person, so we have all the information. We don't all have to grab the information from the subject matter experts separately. We actually have all of it in one place, and we're all following the same messaging. We're all aligned, and then everything kind of fits more coherently.
Mm-hmm. And it's such an important point that you make about that consistency, the alignment, right? Everybody staying on message with the same message. What are the risks if you don't stay consistent with your message? Like, what happens when different subject matter experts in different areas, they're not all on the same page? How would you describe or rank the risks of that for a communications and marketing program?
Yeah, I guess, well, the subject matter experts wouldn't be as externally exposed, I guess. So it'd be more us on the marketing side or the com side who may, all have to be more aligned, because it's what we say or how we publish things that gets out there. The risk is that it distills the message. I mean, it kind of dilutes the message, because if you're saying one thing one side and then saying something completely different on another side, or if your website looks like one thing but the social media branding looks completely different, things like that, those things, if they don't align, people kind of get mixed signals. They don't know what to follow. They don't think, oh, I thought that was actually an interesting brand and now it's not, or I thought they did interesting research and now they don't, or so everything has to kind of align, because otherwise the people you have, existing customers and prospects, can get kind of confused, and therefore not be as loyal to your brand or to the way your marketing team, in terms of what they produce. So yeah.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head in my opinion. And I think that diluting the message definitely speaks as well to this very fragmented media landscape that we're currently looking at. And this was something that was in the Wall Street Journal article that they mentioned, and that I'm sure you're keenly aware of with your background. I know for me on the PR side, something I'm keenly aware of, but the number of reporters and journalists in the United States has significantly decreased in the last 20 to 25 years. And when we would think about getting the message out traditionally, back at that time, right, like earned media would be one of the top lanes and mediums for that. And earned media still obviously has a very important role to play now, but there's so many other ways that you can connect with your stakeholders or your key publics, right, if you're a public organization. And when you do not have consistency and alignment in that message that you're putting out there, right, that it makes perfect sense what you're saying. How, okay, well, even if you're using different formats, right, the message always needs to be the same. So you don't want to have one message here on your Instagram account and another message there on LinkedIn, or another third message in the press release or the website. So it's really about creating that holistic experience, right? So that, yes, people do feel more connected to your brand. They understand your brand. They understand what you're trying to say. They feel like they know you. It's just these really, really important connection factors with our audiences that we risk, alienating potentially if we don't have alignment. So I'm really glad that you touched on that. And I think that the skill sets that are required to do what you've been sharing here with me and with my audience, obviously they're in demand, right? According to the Wall Street Journal article as well, there were 50,000 listings under marketing and 20,000 job listings under media and communications that mentioned the term storytelling between 2024 and 2025. So, I would love to hear why you think that trend is happening, and just your initial reactions overall to seeing that article come out in Wall Street Journal, because you're probably like, duh. But
Yeah.
why do you think that that storytelling piece is specifically trending up from the business perspective, and would love your reactions to the article.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's kind of like where content, or you can call it storytelling now, or brand. There's loads of different, I guess, terminology for it, but all of these things have they come in waves, especially in like in the market that I work in, which is tech or B2B tech, where some things become really important, and then some things aren't as important. And I feel like with content, especially obviously with AI, people assumed, okay, ChatGPT is here, so content will become less important. We can actually just do everything with AI or whatever it is. So for me personally, I like the fact that, of course, it's been considered a key skill, and I think it is a key skill. And I think what that shows is organizations are seeing real return on investment from their narratives playing out in all of these different ways, like we've said, like actually being able to distill that narrative in loads of different ways. They also see it, according to the article and the kind of companies and the kind of jobs that they're putting out, they also see it as a kind of senior skill set where they realize it's not just something that anyone can do. And I think that's also an important nuance, because for a long time, and especially with AI again, the assumption is anyone can write content. And of course, as a content marketer, that's pretty annoying to hear. But also, to an extent, it's true, because AI does help a lot, and it does a pretty decent job of getting you so far. What it doesn't help with, and what someone who isn't a real content expert or storyteller is being able to actually prompt for the right things if you are using AI, to actually edit and incorporate the messaging and things and the feelings that someone who does have that experience can do. And also the fact that AI is very agreeable, right? Like if you tell AI to do one thing, it will say you've done the best job possible ever, right? The fact is that you need to actually catch it out. You need to have something about you as a storyteller to say, no, that's not quite right. I'm actually looking for this, or those nuances are super important, because they can be the difference between if you're doing a big research project and you have the wrong questions. They can be the difference between realizing actually this one question could determine how successful this whole research project is. And that's the kind of thing I think these companies are now looking at and saying, okay, this is actually a pretty important thing, and we'd like someone who can do it across a broad spectrum of media and content.
Yeah, and we get it. We understand why it's important. It's good to see that business leaders are also recognizing the importance of this skill set. And I'm curious, just from your point of view, coming from, again, a journalism background, being in the role that you're in now, but I can't say I was surprised to see the degree of response to this article when it came out, mostly from people who are in communications roles or marketing roles, where communications is a really important aspect of their work. Just being like, hallelujah, thank you for saying this, Wall Street Journal, that we've been saying this for years, that storytelling is important. Why do you think, and really I am just looking for your point of view on this, I certainly have my own opinions, but why do you think that people feel so happy to see this being represented in the Wall Street Journal? Like, is it because of AI, to your point about, oh, well, anybody can make content with AI? Is it that storytelling or narrative or brand piece has been kind of deprioritized in years past, right? There's like all these different factors, but from your perspective, why do you think there was this collective sigh of, thank God somebody said it when this article came out?
I think it's a combination of things. Some of the things that we mentioned before is the journalism market, even while I was in it, was like being demolished like year by year. More and more people were moving into comms or marketing or into completely different fields, because it just wasn't a sustainable environment to be in. And therefore, they're still using that same skill set in a different way, but they're not normally recognized for it. I guess the content marketing field is similar, like I mentioned before, in terms of, there's been a number of things that have happened which kind of make people think, oh, but it's just content. And AI is obviously the biggest of those, but even previously, the fact that SEO and Google, SEO content is just seemingly like, oh, it's just this, like, what is X, and listicles and clickbait essentially. And all of these things have diminished the kind of importance of content and narrative. But at the same time, it's funny because it's still such a big revenue driver, or it's still, there is still a tangible metric, the tangible metrics that suggest that content is very important. All while other marketing positions like product marketing, which is considered far more, maybe in-depth expertise in the product side of things, is still, has always been considered like, hey, this is never going to change, this is never going to go away, we always need a product marketer. Whereas content marketing is always like, question mark, is this value still there? Like, it's kind of that you always keep having to prove yourself that this has tangible value. And the same thing, I guess, for PR, which I do a lot of as well, the comms side, right? It's like you just that value of earned media, and being able to, again, translate that message from marketing to PR, and understand that, hey, this thing isn't going to appeal to journalists because I've been a journalist, and XYZ, they're not looking for anything to do with your product per se, they're looking for something interesting in itself. And those little nuances are all really important. So I think anyone who's got that storyteller background feels like probably like hey, yeah, this is actually justification that we do have a good skill set. It is something that is valuable, and it's great that at least one article is saying that's the case, and that happens to be in the Wall Street Journal.
Yes, absolutely agree. And yeah, with PR, totally similar situation where it was, it's a quintessential challenge of PR to demonstrate the business value of what PR professionals do. I think, back in the day, it was much more clearly understood why it mattered. But, in the and I just did actually another interview on this the other day, but just sort of the balance, or I guess what has been an imbalance between the performance marketing side of things and then like the brand side of things. And I think we're kind of seeing the pendulum swing back a little bit, and this sort of unconscious, unspoken need for companies to invest more on the brand side. And I think the storyteller piece fits perfectly into that, where it's like, okay, we need to continue what we're doing on the performance marketing side, but we also recognize that having a strong story, having a strong narrative, having those strong connections with our audience, and that's not just customers, right? There's a lot of different stakeholders that you can communicate with and that you need to engage. So, just being able to invest more in that side of things is a relief, I would say, for most PR professionals that I know. And, of course, with AI search and all that, like, it's yielding a lot more results from earned media. So, of course, then PR kind of bumps up in importance that way. But, that's all of this to say that, yes, on the PR side, I've definitely seen that kind of response as well. And, happy response to storytelling being considered valuable, right? And having the Wall Street Journal say it is like super validating. So anyway, but Sooraj, I think, we can wrap it up here, but before we do, I would love to ask you if you have any final thoughts on this topic, if there's anything else that you think our listeners should know related to this article, related to storytelling. What's your sort of final takeaway or note for our listeners?
Yeah, I guess I don't really have any other thoughts. I just hope that it's something that that isn't just a trend or a wave where it kind of comes and goes, and I think it's hopefully the start of something else. And you kind of touched on it there, but the LLM side of things. I think people were scared about AI, what AI can do from the generation point of view, to take away jobs. But like you say, it's actually doing things in other ways, from the way it's pulling things from different sources, which is actually putting things back up in terms of credibility, including earned media, including SEO, even including other things which you wouldn't have thought of were, the value you thought was kind of diminishing. And actually, it's great to see that there's the flip side of AI as well.
Absolutely. Very well said. And Sooraj, thank you so much for joining me for Good Marketing with Stephanie today. Thank you for sharing your insights with me and with my audience. Again, just really appreciate your perspective as someone with your background, again, in journalism, and then moving over into the marketing side, and someone who, being a storyteller is a fundamental aspect of what you do. So again, I think you are uniquely qualified to speak to this topic. And, in the show notes, we will link to the article that we've been discussing during this episode. But I also want to link to and ask you, Sooraj, to share where friends of Good Marketing with Stephanie can find you on social media.
Yeah, I think the best place is LinkedIn. I'm also on X, but I think LinkedIn is probably the best place.
Fantastic. So yes, we will include a link to your profile in the show notes. Make sure that you go ahead and follow Sooraj. He's great, has a lot of great insight to share. And until next time, if you learned something new today, or if you heard an idea that lit some kind of spark for you, please subscribe to our podcast. Please give us a nice rating and share our podcast with anyone else who you think could benefit from this. And until next time, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us, Sooraj.
Thanks so much.